Exactly. So what I'm saying is that the best way to build your business is by
People, so what is the third step then? Like we move through the first, we move to the second where they're holding their launch. And this is where I think it's really interesting, like where you're talking about, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like they've heard of the Jeff Walker launch um, PLF formula, right? And they're like, okay, I'm going to hold a launch. They're thinking it's one launch. Your whole genius in this is that it's, we're going to do one launch and then you're going to take a short break and then we're going to do another launch. Whether that is the same funnel, whether it's a different funnel, whether it's something else in the value ladder, we're going to do an internal, we're going to do another external. But because you're planning it, they can continue to do numerous launches until they just keep scaling, correct?
That's right. Exactly.
So if somebody's thinking about doing this, if they're thinking about it and like they're still in pain, what's something that they can do to just start moving the needle forward?
So that's a great question, and the answer to that, is just to be willing to do something different, what most online marketers aren't willing to do, and that is to to try something and stick with it and add layers to it until it gets legs and builds your long-term success. And that's the tie-in to step three. And I'm just going to show it real quick, and then we're going to be done with that imagery.
Mhm.
But step three here, after you've done your launch, is that you evaluate your results and you move forward, so that you've already got a plan. You've already seen how sequencing can work. And so now you see, wow, my results were either less or better than the initial plan for that first launch from the sequencing. Now let's adjust the model with real data and see how to move forward. And then we can see again, are we at a trajectory to move there, faster or slower? And so that's where we take all the data, the KPMs, the key performance metrics from the first launch, and we adjust it, to start launching again, and to launch again as quickly as we can. So that's how, the whole thing comes together, in that you are quickly internalizing a launch mode, and you can have several things going on at once. A one that's on autopilot, as well as your main product that you're going to do, say, every quarter, to reaching out to affiliates and doing a roadshow launch, in the interim, to sharpen the saw.
Awesome. I love it. So we've walked through what somebody can do to get started with the launch. We've kind of walked through the different phases of a launch. What is something that you see a lot of people in the online space do wrong, or something that you see another guru talk about that says, do this? What's something that people should avoid at all costs?
Well, I'm going to be pretty radical in what the answer is, and I know that you probably wouldn't even expect it, but the idea is, uh, avoid putting your focus on building your marketing influence and your list in front of putting your product or services out there. So I'm saying flip that. Now, how about that? I mean, that's a pretty radical idea, right?
So you're saying develop the product first, or to at least develop the idea for the product and get it into beta.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is that the best way to build your business is by taking the work to plan a launch that will not only pay for itself, but in the process, you have to build your reach. You have to spend money on advertising, in order to have the launch be successful. And then as a result of that, bam, you have greater social media following, you have the start of a list, and all of that will build upon itself. All right, so
Awesome.
let me expand on that
Yeah.
just a little bit. So last year I did a virtual summit with this exactly in mind, and came out of the summit. I created a budget for this launch before the event, and I saw that in that event I needed to spend money on advertising to get the audience, but that the results of what the pricing was for the summit, and the upsell program as a result of it, that I would come out ahead above my advertising. And so I was willing to go ahead and take that risk because the downside was actually low. There was a fair amount of upside above, the advertising cost. And
Mhm.
I built, just on the organic part of that, I built my list by 1,000 people, bam, in 3 weeks, because I had a focus of where I was sending them and a tangible result. And now all of those people had the result of that outcome, that launch. They either bought, the virtual summit, the result of that launch, in this case, a challenge, or they had seen the marketing material and I had built up that know, like, and trust factor such that they were open to further marketing methods. And so I'm saying, do a planned outcome approach where you can budget in your ad costs to get a better than break even outlay, that in the process, you're out there, you're making money and you have something to build on and you've built your list in the process.
I think you're right, because there's some, like, just touching on like the people that get obsessed with the list. Yes, you need a list, but build a list while you're building the product. And what you just laid out is, if you do the launch correctly, your downside, yes, it's going to cost you some money, but your downside is very manageable and your upside could be huge. You're going to make money while you're building your list, which is what you want to do. Because if you just spend money building a list, but you don't have a clear thing that you're selling or a clear place that you're taking people, it's going to be a waste of time all the way around.
Exactly. And uh, and there's a related thing about this, and we have a mindset typically that advertising is an outlay, is a necessary outlay, and so there's a perceived risk of, can I make enough revenue to to overcome that? Well, the answer is yes. The goal is to have your advertising pay for itself, and so that you actually make more money from than you spend on your advertising in the campaign that you're using the advertising for, such as a Facebook ads campaign. And so what better way to do that than to have an offer that has several components, so that in the combination of the things that you're offering, if at first your ads are costing you money, you add something to that offer so that it now becomes profitable. Then you can start to scale. So that's where the model scales, getting from a break even to how much money am I willing to put into advertising, even though I know that I'm going to make more money on it. And that's your biggest limitation. And so people go from, I'm going to try maybe $1,000, but wow, I made more money than I advertised. So the next launch, I'm going to try maybe $5,000. And then before long, they've got $80,000 in on the launch and have made $1 million on the launch.
That's awesome. I mean, that is a really good way to look at it. That way you're not blowing all your money at once. I mean, we both know marketers who have maxed out their credit cards, taken home equity lines, like really spent a ton of money before they had anything proven, before they had anything going. And the thing is, like, I'm going to be real for a second. If you were to somehow knock it out of the park on your first or second try, you wouldn't be able to handle it, because do you know how to onboard a team? Do you know how to deal with do you know how to deal with $300,000 in sales? Do you know how to deal with that much in refunds? Do you have a merchant account that can handle it? Like, build up. Like, it doesn't mean that this has to take years. A year to 2 years to grow a list to a size that can do a $100,000, $200,000 launch. I mean, if you're doing $100,000 launch and you're doing it 4 times a year, that's a pretty good place to be.